So we're going to be going through every Premier League club from 20th to 1st and listing their best player this season and their most underrated player this season. So not best player overall, their best performer this season. Also bringing in some honourable mentions. So please do hit that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe down below to Keeler Football if you're new for pretty much daily football content, match reactions, reviews, transfer news. Do a few type analysis videos as well, and then just generally ranking every Premier League club video, starting with bottom of the league, Sheffield United. I'm going to get through these bottom teams quite quickly because I've not watched loads of them. From the minimal I've watched Sheffield United, I'd say the best player has been James Booker-T, the most underrated player has been Jack Robertson. I haven't seen enough of Sheffield United to comment on them because they bore me. Same with Burnley, their best player looks like Bayer, and I think the most underrated player, and it's a shame he's going through some problems at the moment, and I hope that he gets in a good place, but Lyle Foster, I thought he was actually pretty impressive for Burnley this season. Going into Luton, you know what? Luton have had quite a few players that have impressed me, but I'm going to go with Ross Barkley. He's really impressed me. He's really stepped up a level. He kind of showed the Ross Barkley's potential of the past, and he's been a very good signing for Luton. And the most underrated might be a bit biased because he's technically a United player, United Academy player, but Ted Nengi is wanted by Fulham. He's wanted by Crystal Palace. I know what he was like in the United youth days. He's a solid centre-back, and he has been brilliant for Luton. Now, Sheffield United and Burnley, they've lost games 5-0, 6-0. Luton have never been battered or thrashed. They always lose a game by 1 goal or 2 goals. They're not conceding loads of goals. And to be honest, their defence has been so solid this season. And Ted Mengi's a big part of that. Going into Everton, I think their best player this season has been Braithwaite. You could argue Decore, you could argue Mickey. He stepped up a bit. Some people say Amadou Onana. I think he's been decent, but I think Braithwaite has been so impressive. He's been linked to United, Real Madrid, a lot of big sides. But what's so impressive about him is he's incredibly two-footed. He can play either side at the back, but he's physical. It's the physical presence. He wins everything in the box. He wins his duels. And although he's not the most mobile, and Everton don't play a particularly high line or particularly expansive style of football, you can see that actually he has the traits to read the game really well, intercept the game, use both feet, get his body in the way, and he's a proper box defender, and I think that's what top teams will want. They want a defender that's good at defending the wide channels and a proper box defender. And Braithwaite, with his age, his experience at PSV, very good as well, very good for England youth levels. He could be top. You know how John Stones went from Everton to Man City, and John Stones' quality? He could be like that. Different player to John Stones, but you know what I mean. And then I've gone most underrated for Decore. And the reason I've gone with Decore is I keep hearing Amadou Onana this, Amadou Onana that, from United fans, from Arsenal fans. Amadou Onana, Amadou Onana, Amadou Onana. But I think Decore has looked a little bit better this season. Maybe that's just me when I've watched Everton. I would rather sign Amadou Onana as a United fan. But I think Decore has looked a bit better. If you're an Everton fan, let me know. Going into Forest, and I found this one really difficult because I think Forest have had a few players that have been good, like Aina, Gibbs-White, Elanga. They've had a lot of players that have looked good this season, but I've gone with Gibbs-White as their best player because I think overall he's their best player. I don't know if I'd say he's their best performer this season, but he's in the top 3, so I've just gone with Gibbs-White. And then I think most underrated player this season is probably Murillo. I think he's stepped up, he's done a good job. And I was just thinking, Elanga's done well, but we're giving him a lot of praise as United people. I'd probably say Murillo. And I have to say, there has been some really impressive people at Forest, also disappointed people like Sangari and Danilo, but Murillo's been impressive. Going into Crystal Palace, and if you watch Crystal Palace versus Arsenal, Crystal Palace are flat. They are not playing good football. They are not good to watch, but they have players like Gay, Eze, and obviously Elise that's been injured that are the difference makers. And Eze, compared to the rest of the Crystal Palace squad versus Arsenal, was just like this complete other level. So their best player this season has been Eze. He'll get a top move. And the most underrated player this season is Tyrick Mitchell. Every time I watch Crystal Palace play, I actually think they have been pretty good defensively. And I think Tyrick Mitchell is having a very good season. As no one's talking about it. And look, I think Chelsea need left back. I think Arsenal might even think about getting a left back in. Don't know if he's what they want, but I think he would be good signings for them. Brentford, I've just gone with Jensen as the best player, and Jensen is the most underrated player because no one talks about Jensen, but it's more about his consistency. I don't think Brentford have had their best season, but Ivan Toney's coming back in. They're going to step up, and can't exactly say Ivan Toney's the best player or most underrated player because everyone rates him and he's not played this season, but his last game which he scored. Diving into Fulham was a difficult one because I think Leno has had a very, very good season. I think a few players at Fulham had a very, very good season, but I'm going to go with Palhinha because overall he is the best player, and I'd say he's been their best player this season. But if you're a Fulham fan and you disagree, let me know. And the most underrated, I've gone for Anthony Robinson. I think he's a very, very good left back. I almost did go for Iwobi as most underrated because Iwobi's almost got this sort of tainted name where everyone acts like he's crap, but I actually think he's been alright for Fulham. But I've gone with Anthony Robinson. Going into Bournemouth, Solanke's been their best player this season. The goals that guy is getting is phenomenal. I'd say last season he would have been the most underrated, and this season people are buying into his quality. I think the quality's always been there, but there's always been a big question mark on it. And most underrated is Billing. This guy has been phenomenal for Bournemouth over the years. Best player last season, 100% was the best player last season. And this season he's always good, always putting the ship defensively in midfield, all over the place. I think he's an absolute solid player. I think he's a proper player you want in the team. Wolves. Now, Wolves used to have this massive problem where they could never score. They had Fabio Silva, they had Sasa Kalal, whatever he's called. They've had so many strikers since him and his head injury, and none of their strikers seem to be putting the ball in the back of the net. And then Hwang came in last season. Wolves didn't have the great season last season, but this season he's really got going under Gary O'Neill. 13 goal contributions in 20 games. Really good. I think he's got 10 goals in the Premier League. Really impressive, but it's not just that he's scoring goals. I think his hold-up play is good. I think his movement is good. I think his reading of the game is good. And do you know who I almost put as Wolves' best player was Lamina. Now, my stepdad is a Wolves fan, and he's been banging on about how good Lamina's been. But if I was asking general people who's Wolves' best player been this season, they go Hwang. But no one really said Lamina, and I think that's because he goes under the radar because he doesn't get the goals. But he's someone that's really stepped up for Wolves. He's someone that's been super impressive as well. And if you're a Wolves fan, of course, get in the chat. Let me know. Newcastle United was a difficult one because best player this season, I've gone with Gordon/Bruno G, but then I also would throw Trippier in there as well. And then, because although they've had other players like Botman have been good, he's been injured for so long. Joel Linton's been good, but he's been injured. They've had, Isaac's had injuries, Wilson's had injuries. They've all been good. But I think Gordon and Bruno G have been the most consistent. And I think Bruno G is their best player, but I think this season, in terms of expectation, I think Anthony Gordon's probably delivered the most. And then most underrated, I've gone with Fabian Schär. I think considering the injuries they've had at centre back and Botman being out and partner in the stars, Fabian Schär has been very, very good, very, very solid, always puts in a shift. I almost did put Joel Linton in most underrated, but I think people do rate Joel Linton. I think now Joel Linton is such a good midfielder. I am saying this as a Manchester United fan. I think Joel Linton is such a good midfielder, but he's just got injury issues, and that's a big blow. But him and Bruno Guimaraes together, whenever in the midfield together, Newcastle look immense. I think Joel Linton is a baller. Continuing on to Chelsea, I think everyone can agree Chelsea's best player has been Cole Palmer. He's like the only bright spark at Chelsea. However, saying that, I think that Chelsea are showing promise. Chelsea have shown promise recently. I think that they've got some really good young players. I think Pochettino is a decent manager. I think they need to give it time. Chelsea fans need to be patient. And then most underrated was difficult for Chelsea because some of their players that are underperforming are almost overhyped, and some of their players that are performing aren't liked by Chelsea fans. And Disasi was a player on Chelsea side where I thought he's a decent centre back, but I didn't think he'd be better than Badashile or any of that. I was like, could they get better options like Tolibo? And Gallagher was the one that they wanted out because they've got Enzo, they've got Caicedo, they've got Lavia, but Gallagher's probably been their best midfielder this season. I actually think Caicedo is improving for Chelsea. You can see him growing. I thought he looked good his last couple of games, but I've gone with Disasi and Gallagher because I think they're two players that, in the width of things, weren't widely rated by Chelsea fans, particularly at the beginning of the season, and they've been pretty impressive this season as well. And Spurs are looking at Gallagher, and maybe they'll sell him Chelsea because pure profit, and they need the FFP balance. Going into Brighton, there's quite a few players that had a good season for them. 8th place, up there again. But considering João Pedro's coming from the Championship, it's his first season, 15 goal contributions in 25 games this season. He's delivering, his movement's good, his reading of the game is good, his ability to do those quick 1-2s is good. I'd say João Pedro's been particularly impressive. And then I'd say most underrated is Pascal Gross. And I think it's a guy that's been consistently a key player for Brighton over these last few years in Brighton's success. But he doesn't get the hype that Matoma got, Caicedo got, McAllister got, even Ferguson got. But Pascal Gross has always been up there for Brighton every year. And this season, again, he's showing lots of promise. He reminds me, he's nothing like Bernardo Silva in the sense of Bernardo Silva's levels, but he gives me that kind of Bernardo Silva-esque energy where people sometimes underestimate his role and what he gives to the team. Diving into 7th, Man United, and as a Man United fan, this was hard. because best player, I was like, well, Maino's played 5 games. I was like, has anyone been good? Like Maguire when he's played has been good, but he's been injured. Evans when he's played has been good, but he's been injured. Varane when he's played has been good, but he's been injured. Like the only players that have actually played a lot of games this season are Garnacho, Bruno Fernandes. Rashford's played quite a few games, and he's really had a poor season. And Nana has had a poor season. And basically everyone else in the Man United, and McTominay's played a lot, but basically everyone else in the Man United team has played a couple of games, then been injured for months. So to say best player, you've got limited options. I'd say the defence has been good. Delo's been all right, but I'd say best player's been Garnacho, because if you look at everyone's standards at the beginning of the season, this was a season where Garnacho just wanted to establish himself as a regular name starting on the team sheet. He was coming off the bench last season scoring, and he's established himself as our best left winger over Rashford this season. So I think by what Garnacho was hoping to achieve this season, he's probably been United's best player. And the most underrated, I've gone with Luke Shaw. Lots of people in our fan base slam Luke Shaw, and why he's frustrating with his injuries. I will tell you this as a Manchester United fan. Luke Shaw is so underrated by our own fan base. We saw it for England in the Euros. Yes, he had that poor season under Mourinho. Yes, he's had injury issues. But Luke Shaw is a quality player. He can play centre-back. He can play left-back. I think he's a good player. I mean, I almost put Maguire in most underrated, because Maguire's made out to be awful. And while he hasn't been great, he's not as awful as made out to be. But Luke Shaw actually has had 3 phenomenal seasons for United, and fans don't like him. But our fans don't like Luke Shaw. They don't like Bruno. They don't like Rashford. They don't like any of our players, our fans. And I'm thinking, well, we've got a lot worse players. Diving into West Ham. Now, West Ham was hard because West Ham were in 6th. Kudus has been great. Bowen's been great. Paquetá's been great. Alvarez has been great. So I didn't even know who to go with for West Ham. I think Kudus has got the hype. He's their new signing. He's come from Ajax. He shows his flair. Again, his ability to move the ball, curate, make runs. He's pretty good with the ball at his feet. He's got that kind of aesthetically pleasing style. You look at Kudus and you go, yeah, this guy's intelligent. And why are you bringing Anthony when you could have brought Kudus? But I'm going to go with Bowen. 13 goal contributions in 20 games, whether it's centre forward, whether it's on the right. I think his importance to West Ham is absolutely massive. So I'm going to go with Jarrod Bowen. And most underrated, I'm going to go with Edson Alvarez, because you look at what DMs were going for. They lost Declan Rice. He was 100 million. Caicedo was like 100 million. You saw the DM market. Lavia was 50+ million. What those players were going for. And West Ham just went in and they got Edson Alvarez. And he's been better than all of them. And West Ham fans have been talking about how good Edson Alvarez is. But not many people outside of West Ham have said that or noticed that. Diving into 5th here, and I've gone with Spurs. Spurs was a difficult one because Maddison and Van de Ven were their 2 best players pre-injury. And then for best, it was between Son, Pedro Porro. And I do think Decky's been good at moments. But I'm just going to say Son just beats out Pedro Porro. And to be honest, you could arguably go to Pedro Porro just because Son, I feel like, is the guy that's leading the line. He's had to step up in Kane's absence and all of that. But it was easily going to be Son or Pedro Porro. Decky was up there. I mean, Christian Romero's been good. Vicario has been good. This explains how good Spurs have been when I'm thinking, well, Doggy, Decky, Romero, Vicario, all these players could be in there. But I think I'm going to go with Son just because of the absence of Kane, him playing in the middle, him playing on the left. He's been being captain, what he adds. I think he's been their best player this season. And the most underrated, I've gone with a Doggy and Sarr. 2 players that have obviously sort of come in this season, but technically last season, and really stepped up and grown under Ange. I think they're 20, 21 years of age, so young, can get so much better. And I think Sarr in his last few games before sort of going to AFCON and stuff, you could see what he was adding. And I think there was a lot of people saying Basuma, Bentancur, Maddison midfield, but it's looking like now Bentancur, Sarr, Maddison midfield could be Tottenham's best midfield. He's been phenomenal. Going in with Arsenal, I've gone with Declan Rice number 1, closely followed by Saliba. It could have been either Declan Rice or Saliba. I think Gabriel's also been very, very good. But I'm going to go with Declan Rice because when you're £100 million signing, there's pressure. There's a lot of pressure. And I don't think Arsenal's midfield's had the most balance the way Arteta sets up. And I don't think that helps Rice, but Rice has dealt with it fine. He intercepts everything. He's one of the reasons they've got so many clean sheets because he protects the defence, but also he's the best midfielder in terms of progressing the ball. He can break the lines. He can do those quick 1-2s to carry the ball up the pitch. He's an all-round top midfielder and like £100 million player. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And I think centre-backs are pairing. Saliba and Gabriel are great. Their partnership are great. But I think Declan Rice is all on his own. And he does it so well. He's the interception monster. I wish Man United signed him. He's phenomenal. And I think he's been their best player this season. And then I'd say most underrated, I'm going to go with Tomiyasu. I think Arsenal fans rate Tomiyasu. But when he's been injured, I think the Arsenal don't look as good at fullback because I guess they've got Kivior, which isn't the best. Zinchenko's good against low blocks and teams that you expect Arsenal to beat, but if you put Zinchenko up against a top 6 side, he struggles a bit there. Ben White, I don't think has been as good this season. They've missed Jury and Timber. I think whenever Tomiyasu's played, he's put in a shift. He's always been good, and I think he's not one of those names that gets the hype, but I think he's probably their most underrated player. I did almost consider Gabriel because I think he's been solid this season, but I think people are starting to notice how good Gabriel's been as well. Going into third, I've gone with Aston Villa, and again, just like Tottenham, there could have been 4 or 5 names for Aston Villa. There really could have been. I mean, they're having a fantastic season, and I've actually gone with Leon Bailey, and it was difficult because I had 4 or 5 names in my head. I think Douglas Luiz, John McGinn, Kamara, the midfield's been good, Konza's been good, Pau Torres has been good, Watkins has been good. But the reason I'm going to go with Leon Bailey is because I think he's really stepped up this season. He's really gone up a gear this season. And I think that these last few games for Villa has looked phenomenal. He's looking like a really exciting, electric player. And the most underrated, I feel like there's a pattern where I'm a lot of the time for underrated, I'm putting defensive players because I think attacking players just do get more of the attention, more of the hype. I've gone with Pau Torres and Konza. I think those two have been phenomenal. Pau Torres, his delivery, him allowing Villa to play the high line, him playing the balls in, his ability on the ball. I know he was always a good ball playing centre back, but he's been a lot better than I thought. He's been great, but Konza's been equally as good. And I think Tyrone Mings getting injured, and this is going to sound horrible, was a blessing in disguise because I never particularly rated Tyrone Mings. I think he's a decent player, but the quality of these two is phenomenal. Going into Manchester City, their best player and their best player this season has hands down been Rodri. When he's not there, they don't win. He is so important for them. He's so good. He's been phenomenal. And the most underrated player, and I know he's a rated player, but it's Bernardo Silva. I'll say this now. Nunes hasn't delivered. Kovacic hasn't delivered. They haven't had Kevin De Bruyne. But Bernardo Silva, that game versus Liverpool, that first half, wow, he ran the show. Bernardo Silva can play centre mid, he can play attacking mid, he can play out wide. He just does what Pep asks him to do. And I think his all-round ability is immense. He doesn't get the hype of the Kevin De Bruynes and the Haalands. But I think he's one of the most important integral players to Pep. And he's needed. Man City have needed him this season. And diving into one, I've gone with Liverpool. Well, Liverpool are first. I'm doing this in order from 20th to last. But best player this season for Liverpool's Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk is back to his best. Trent's been good, but Trent started a bit slow. They've had other players injured. Salah's been good, but Mir Szoboszlai started well, dropped off a bit. McAllister's been very good. They've had a lot of players that have been very good. They are top of the league, obviously. But I'm going to go with Van Dijk. I think he's looking like prime Van Dijk again. Has he had a bad game this season? Has he actually had a bad game this season? Because every player normally has one bad game in a season, and I can't think of Van Dijk's had a bad game. He's been partnered with Matip, Kwanzaa, Konate, does the job. He's there, and if Liverpool are going to win a title, he's the main reason for that. And I say that Liverpool, to win a title, and this is what Klopp's done, they dominate the midfield. They've rebuilt their midfield full of energy so they can dominate games. They've got that absolute experienced, no-nonsense box centre-back that can win everything in Van Dijk. They've got Alisson that's solid, and then they just need to finish it up top. They're creating the chances in midfield, and Jota's been very clinical. But I'm going to go with Van Dijk as Liverpool's best player this season. The most underrated have gone with Endo and McAllister, because actually, them coming in as DM when they got all that BS about not getting Caicedo, not getting Lavia, and I predicted Liverpool 4th, and I thought they're missing a proper number 6, and I really underestimate these guys. Both of them have had very, very good, solid games. Both of them have been impressive. I don't even think McAllister's a natural 6, and he's done well. I think recently Konate, when he's come in, has stepped up loads and been a beast as well. He's gone under the radar, but I think Liverpool fans know how good he is. I think they're probably the most underrated. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you disagree with, because obviously I'm a United fan. I don't watch the other clubs week in, week out. Smash a like, smash a subscribe. Let me know if you have any video ideas, of course, as well. I do want to do some more analysis videos because they've been lacking a bit at the moment. Thank you for watching. Bye.